While I wish I could have traveled with my students and colleagues the 6,094 miles across the Pacific Ocean to meet all of you in Long Beach, California, it's a real pleasure to have the science and technology to be speaking directly to you today. Hafide, my name is Austin Shelton, and I'm from the island of Guam. Like our friends in Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, American Samoa, and the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, Guam is an unincorporated territory of the United States. Our indigenous people of Guam, the Chamorros, came here 4,000 years ago on canoes using the ancient science of celestial navigation. Guam, though only 212 square miles, is the largest and most populous island of a majestic region called Micronesia. It's a large ocean area of 2,100 islands spread across 2.3 million square miles. I'm blessed to be a native of this special place and to have grown up on the shore in the central part of the island, in a place called Asin Bay. It was my backyard. I love spending time with my dad out there. He would take me for walks along the shoreline and out along the fringing coral reefs at low tide. We'd go swimming and snorkeling, but my absolute favorite thing to do was learning how to fish. Watching my interest in the ocean grow, my dad was wise enough to throw in some other lessons too. He helped me set up my very first science fair project. One day we went to a grocery store and bought a case of drinks in glass bottles. Each time we'd finish a drink, we'd wash it and dry it out. Then I'd put a note in the bottle with my name and address in it. And as the tide was going out of the bay, turning from high tide to low tide, I'd throw a bottle in the water and watch it float out to sea. I must have done this around 40 or 50 times. A few months had gone by, and then I started getting some letters. I ended up with 6 pen pals from the Philippines, 1,496 miles away. This little experiment on ocean currents turned out to be my first winning project at the island-wide science fair. When I was in high school, several years later, my family was having some financial trouble, and it was becoming really difficult to pay the electricity bill. At that time, I was also thinking, if we couldn't pay a power bill, how could I ever afford to go to college? My science teacher mentioned that you could get scholarships for college by winning science fairs. So looking out at the ocean, I wondered if there could be an answer out there again. In the backyard, I saw those same currents that floated my bottles out of the bay into the Philippines. They were always there. Every time a wave washed into the bay, it had to flow back out through a channel. So I went to a family's friend's home, my Uncle John, who owned a junkyard. We pulled out parts from the junkyard, like the lower drive unit of an outboard motor, some scrap metal, an alternator, a battery from a broken down car, and I created a prototype to generate electricity from ocean currents and waves. I named it Liquid Energy, placed it in the ocean, and the thing actually worked. I won at the Island-wide Science Fair and then some awards at the Intel International Science and Engineering Fair, and eventually got a full tuition offer to Hawaii Pacific University to study marine biology. I had another year before I left to college, so I was hanging out in the ocean still. But now I was really bothered by the changes I was observing. Guam is home to the most diverse coral reefs in the United States, and some of the reefs are really still breathtaking. But I was seeing a lot of degradation in the reefs. They were losing their color, they were losing fish, they were turning into ugly graveyards of once vibrant underwater cities. Now, by this time in my life, I realized that I could use science to change the world around me, and that I could actually have a career putting my two passions together, the ocean and science. I went on to finish my undergrad degree and then began studying under Dr. Bob Richmond at the University of Hawaii Kewalo Marine Laboratory. And he was a former director of the University of Guam Marine Lab, so he knew my island well and was there for 18 years. So he gave me opportunities to fly home to Guam and conduct my PhD research and begin finding solutions to the struggling coral reefs. My first stop was meeting with a community from a southern village called Humate. I learned that they weren't catching the same size and quality of fish that they used to. It turns out that poor land use practices and arson fires were the problem. Deer poachers would set hillsides on fire in order to make it easier for them to catch deer. So now this is a common sight that we see around the southern mountains of the island, hillsides hopelessly eroding away. Erosion causes the island to bleed into the ocean, where sediment smothers and kills coral reefs. I got to work right away as a grad student and found ways to start fixing the problem. I gathered up community members, students, and friends. We identified erosion hotspots like these and started planting trees and testing new erosion control strategies. We restored those areas to look like this in under 2 years. We had great success, and by the time I wrapped up my research study, we had prevented over 110 tons of sediment from washing down to that bay. Right after grad school, I landed a dream job back home at the University of Guam as an assistant professor of extension and outreach. If you're familiar with land-grant institutions, you might have heard of extension professors. We do research and teaching, but our main job is to engage our community. We bring the science from the university to the people, and we take their questions back to the university to work on. I later received concurrent appointments to serve as director of 2 amazing units at UOG, the University of Guam Center for Island Sustainability and Sea Grant Program. There are so many things I'm able to work on with an amazing team, topics ranging from the traditional navigation studies to climate change adaptation, food security, sea turtle research, and even promoting a green and circular economy for the island. As a student on my own, I used to ask, how could I use science to change the world around me? But now I get to ask my community every day, how can we use science to change the world around us? I still get to work out in the field and take people tree planting and on watershed adventures to learn about land-sea connections. And I'm also leveling up the science on watershed restoration and using drones to drop seed balls into eroding hillsides. This will hopefully be the solution to get reforestation done much faster. But lately, I've been thinking, are we really doing enough to save our island by working on one local project and then starting on the next local project? How can we use science to change the world around us? This is actually becoming a much bigger question. Thinking about the massive scale of climate change, we need to work in bigger ways across our oceans. A couple of years ago, our Center for Island Sustainability started learning more about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which were adopted in 2015 to put the world on a path to a more sustainable, equitable, and prosperous future. The framework isn't just about saving the environment. With all-encompassing goals like no poverty, zero hunger, quality education, gender equality, it does so much more. Our center talked to our island leaders like our governor and lieutenant governor, and they agreed to place Guam at the global forefront of leadership in island sustainability. Last year, I went with Guam's Lieutenant Governor Tenorio to the UN General Assembly in New York, and Guam officially joined as a founding member of the local 2030 Islands Network. We're now working together with islands across the globe like Hawaii, Seychelles, Curacao, and even Ireland to advance sustainable development goals. The Guam Green Growth Initiative is our local strategy to implement the Sustainable Development Goals. After months of building the framework, we adopted it just last month on September 23rd, and we're now moving our Guam Green Growth targets forward. These global and regional networks have been an amazing help in this work. Late last year, I was selected to join the inaugural cohort of the Obama Foundation's Leaders Asia Pacific program. As an Obama leader, I can now lean on the amazing network of change agents with shared values throughout the world to work on huge challenges together like climate change. There have been amazing opportunities for me and the people I work with. Having this opportunity to speak with you at SACNAS, I've been reflecting on my first conference at SACNAS as a graduate student in 2012. It was the first time I traveled for a science conference, and it was the biggest science event I had ever seen. It took my breath away, and as an islander at the National Diversity in STEM Conference, I was still a minority among minorities, but I never felt out of place. I was welcomed home as a SACNista. And from that moment on, after meeting so many amazing people and seeing all the opportunities available, I knew that SACNAS wasn't something I could ever keep to myself. A few of my friends I found at the University of Hawaii had also been to the conference that year, and when we got back to school, we started a chapter, and I got to become its founding president. Right after I started working as an assistant professor after moving back home, I was invited to give a keynote talk at the Island-wide Science Fair Awards ceremony. Here I am with my high school science teachers that night. We still have a lot of work to do to build up our local capacity, and I'm really pleased to be helping in this effort. A few years ago, we received a National Science Foundation Includes pilot, and last year, with the help of some amazing colleagues, we got an NSF Includes Alliance. Now we're creating opportunities in marine and geosciences for 585 Islander students in Guam, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico over the next 5 years. Special thanks to my colleague, Dr. Kristen Wilson-Grimes at the University of the Virgin Islands for pulling this big team together. Here are some of our Guam students at past SACNAS conferences. It's so fulfilling to see this science being done by Islander students, and I really hope we're able to continue growing these opportunities. Becoming a SACNAS chapter advisor was a huge honor for me, and I can't wait for our chapter to come out in force and meet all of you in person at the next SACNAS conference. But until then, I still have some work to do in my backyard. I have a beautiful family now, and whether my kids become scientists or not, I hope they will develop an appreciation for how science can be used to change the world around them. And I hope that all of you will stick to your science and keep making this world a better place for all of us. So just maasi and thank you.